My Husband's Ex. Episode 3. When Brad returned to the room, Sophia was crying. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, and her face was covered with streaks of tears. My love, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Please talk to me, baby. You know I can't stand your tears. It's ripping my heart apart. What is the matter? Brad asked Sophia, holding up her face with his hands. Is this what I'm going to keep doing? Is this how I have to keep lying to my mother? Am I going to continually wait while you lie to your wife just for us to be together? Sophia asked in between sobs. Oh baby, you haven't done anything wrong. You just had to tell her what you told her to be with me. The man that loves you crazy. Please baby, do away with this unnecessary guilt so we can face this storm together as one soul that we are, Brad told her. Brad, we're not one soul. We were meant to be. But you went behind me and allowed your aunt pressurize you into marrying someone else. Now she has your name, and what do I get? I have to keep covering my mouth whenever you have to call and tell her sweet nothings, Sophia cried. Ah, baby, don't be like this. You know more than I do that the one you call my wife has got nothing but my name, but you have my heart and my soul. Please stop crying. I'll always be the man you want me to be. You'll hardly notice there's anyone called my wife, if you allow me do this things the way I want it, he told her. And without giving her a chance to talk, began kissing her everywhere. A while later, he was cuddling her and falling asleep, after making her let him have his way with her body yet again. He had continued to stroke her hair and make her unending promises until she fell asleep. The next morning, he sent her to her house, and though she wanted him to come in and say hi to her mother, he reminded her about the lie she had told her mother the previous night, and how it'll expose them if her mother saw two of them that morning. He kissed her goodbye and reminded her not to call him, for he'd surely call her as soon as he can get out to see her. Sophia stood waving him goodbye as he drove off, trying so hard to keep the tears back, but they ended up falling freely on their own accord. She entered the house when she had successfully dried her tears and managed to force a happy face. What she didn't know was that while she was talking with Brad in front of their neighbor's house, where he had dropped her, her mother was in their neighbor's house to get cooking pots for the people who were cooking Meg's wedding food. She had been shocked to see Brad and Sophia together that morning when Sophia had told her Brad was in the hospital and she had to stay with him the previous night. Is this not the Brad that Sophia said will be in the hospital for some days because he was sick? Mrs. Chike asked herself and was walking towards them when she heard Brad reminding her not to call him unless he called her. What is going on? Mrs. Chike asked again, and she almost fell down when she heard Sophia lamenting about how she had suddenly become a second fiddle, and how she can't help doing his biddings because she can't stay without the man she loves. She watched Sophia get into the house after she had wiped the tears from her face. Then she walked into the house. Sophia, where did you say you were yesternight? She asked her daughter as soon as she got inside. Good morning, mother. I was in the hospital with Brad, because he is very ill. And I'm even very worried, because from the looks of things, he may not be able to marry me anytime soon, because of his health, Sophia said in a go. Sophia, at what point did you miss the track? At what point did I lose my daughter? Mrs. Chike asked Sophia, startling and confusing her. I don't understand, mother. How would you ask these questions when I'm right here with you? How would you lose your beloved daughter? Sophia asked, trying to force a smile. Before I answer that, Sophia, why don't you tell me what is making you a second fiddle to Brad? And while you're at it, would you like to tell me why you can't call him until he calls you? Mrs. Chike asked Sophia, dragging her to a seat. Sophia would remain grateful to her mother for pulling to that seat, for she would have most certainly lost consciousness if she had remained standing even for a second more. Tears began to roll freely from her eyes as she sat looking at her mother, realization hitting her like a wave. Her mother had seen Brad, and she had heard every damn thing they talked about. And so it was that even though Sophia continued to cry, her mother sat patiently, waiting for her to tell her what she wanted to hear. And indeed, she had to tell her mother how she had gone to Brad's house, and he came home with the wife his aunt had compelled him to marry. She had to tell her about how devastated Brad had been when he heard that Meg was about to be married, and they would have been able to fight off his aunt's pressure if he had known about Meg's marriage some hours earlier. And after he brought his lawfully wedded wife home, "Where did you go to, Sophia?" her mum asked briskly. "Mother, he just had to marry that girl because of the inheritances. It is me he loves and wants to be with, and that's why he left the house with me. I am the only one Brad loves," Sophia answered. "Sophia, what I asked is where you went to. I didn't ask where he kept his manipulating self. I asked where you were the whole of last night," Mrs. Chike spat. "I was in the hotel room he booked for me. And because I am the one who matters to him, he couldn't go home to the one they forced on him. Yes, mother, he spent the night with me, even though it was his wedding night," Sophia bragged. A thunderous slap hit Sophia's face even before she could realize that her mother had heard what she was saying. How stupid can a human be? "Am I your mother? Sophia, did I give birth to someone as senseless as you are?" Mrs. Chike screamed in a fit of rage. "A man who you have been with for so long, and who you say has plans to marry you, gets another wedded behind your back, returns home with the new wife, and he takes you to a hotel room? As what, Sophia? He takes you to a hotel room, and you're proud enough to let me know that he spent the night with you. Doing what exactly? Telling you how much he loves you, and how you would always be the one he loves, and how the wife at home is but a necessity to get his inheritances. And maybe, while you cried your eyes out, he tried to console you, touched you in places you've never been touched before, and one thing led to another, and he took your innocence away. Right, Sophia?" Mrs. Chike analyzed. She was hoping to hear her refute it. But no, Sophia was just crying and rubbing the cheek where the hot slap from before had landed. "Wait, Sophia, did Brad truly take your innocence? Did you let a man who had betrayed you take away your innocence the very night of the same day he had craftily jilted you?" Mrs. Chike asked, almost losing her mind. Sophia had just opened her mouth to speak when Meg entered the sitting room. "Mother, the people cooking at the back of the house need your attention," she told her mother, acting as if she didn't notice there was tension in the sitting room where her mother and her favorite daughter were shouting and crying. The last thing she needed was getting involved in any of their dramas, especially not on a day as important as her wedding day. Meg had tried so hard to forget all that her mother did to her because she felt Sophia was a saint, but she wasn't ready to meddle into their affairs. Mrs. Chike looked at Sophia again before she walked out to meet the people waiting for her. Sophia remained indoors that day, crying and regretting all she had brought upon herself. She was crying because she could see how devastated her mother was at the thought of getting deflowered. She wondered what she would do if she found out that Brad had made her do so many awful things. She couldn't come out for her sister's wedding, of course. She wasn't in the shape to appear in such a joyful occasion. Meg had a low-keyed but very colorful traditional marriage, and though Sophia was missing, only very few noticed it. And their mother actually didn't care where she was until Meg had departed with her husband. Then she decided to go speak with Sophia, but Sophia was nowhere to be found. Mrs. Chike was furious. She knew she'd be nowhere else but with the Brad who was doing so well at manipulating her daughter. She could tell that Sophia didn't go far because her phone was lying on the bed, so she walked out of the house with their dog to go search for her. "Oh, if not the infamous married man who is manipulative enough to get my daughter on his bed, the very same day he betrayed her. Who else could it be?" Mrs. Chike snorted as soon as she saw Sophia standing with Brad at the corner of their neighbor's house. "Good evening, Ma," Brad greeted respectfully, trying to conceal the shock he got when she spoke to him in a way that told him Sophia had been talking too much. "Keep your greetings to yourself, Brad, and keep your hands off my daughter this minute, or I'll set this dog on you." Mrs. Chike blew hot. "I do not blame you for how far you have deceived this daughter of mine. I count it all her fault for allowing you drive her so wickedly. But from this minute, Brad, don't make me see you anywhere close to my daughter, for you won't like what you'll get," she told Brad. "And you, Sophia, before this spittle on the ground dries, be in your room already. Move it, Sophia." Mrs. Chike barked, and Sophia was running inside even before she knew she had pulled her hands from Brad's. Sophia ran inside the house afraid of the kind of embarrassment she knew her mother was capable of giving her, and Brad if she failed to obey her instructions at once. Mrs. Chike stood still, waiting for Sophia to disappear before she began what she had to say to Brad. She needed to talk to him, and she knew Sophia would certainly get in the way if she was standing within earshot. "Listen, Brad, I don't know whatever game it is that you're playing, but you see Sophia, you see that girl? I will not trade her for anything. I'm sure if you were her mother, you wouldn't too. I have just 2 daughters, and the first just got married today. I was hoping that from all the smooth talks you gave, Sophia's marriage would be following almost immediately after. But Brad, whatever it is that made you choose the other girl over my daughter, is the very reason you should stick to her and quit standing as an obstacle and barricade to my daughter. I will not allow you cover my daughter's light with your shadow. I won't do it. Since I lost my husband, these 2 girls have been all I've got. So you see, I won't let any of them go to waste," Mrs. Chike told Brad. "You know, Mummy, I understand how you're feeling. I understand in perfect terms why you're angry. But if you would allow me tell you a few things, I'm sure you will see what I'm trying to say. You will agree with me that I mean no harm for the only woman I have ever loved," Brad told Mrs. Chike, doing his best to get her to listen to him. "Go on, Brad, I'm listening," Mrs. Chike said, tapping her left foot in front of her rapidly, both impatiently and angrily. "Mummy, Sophia and I love each other so much. And Mummy, I'm sure you know that no matter how much I love her, I won't be able to marry her without my family. My aunt played a fast one on me, got a woman I do not know from Adams, and compelled me into marriage, just because my father let her have so much authority over me," Brad said, pulling the pity party string. "Brad, let's assume all you have said now is true. Where does that leave us? Is it not still at the point of staying away from my daughter? Your auntie has so much powers over you, and she made you marry someone else. If you had any milk of humanity left in you, do you need anyone to let you know that hanging around Sophia, even for some seconds more, after getting married, is detrimental to her chances of finding her own spouse?" Mrs. Chike asked him. "Huh, Mummy? Sophia can't be thinking of being with another man. I have told her. What my aunt has done is giving that girl she calls my wife my name, and that's all. She can't stop me from loving and being with Sophia. I do not wish to, and I can't stay without Sophia," Brad said. "Wait, Brad, let me get you straight. You do not wish Sophia to get married to anyone else. You don't even want her to have anything with anyone else, right?" she asked him between clenched teeth. "Exactly, Mummy. I can't imagine my Sophia with another man. I don't think I'll be able to keep living if that happens," he replied. "Oh, Brad, so after everything, your plan is to make my daughter a second wife? You promised her the earth, and even the moon, and now you want my daughter as a second wife? A second fiddle?" Mrs. Chike asked. "Not exactly, Mummy. I can't marry Sophia. My aunt won't allow me. But like I told her, I can make her have everything she wants. She wouldn't even notice that something had happened. Please, Mummy. She just can't be with another man. I won't be able to survive it," he told Mrs. Chike. "Brad or Bread or whatever your name is, I would have loved nothing else but to set this dog on you right now. But people will misinterpret my actions. May thunder fire you there. You have a woman waiting for you at home. One who will bear you children and give you a responsible social appearance in the society. Then my daughter, after years of courtship with you, is relegated to a concubine, forbidden from thinking about raising her own family, because like you said, you can't even take her as a second wife. Help yourself now, Brad, and disappear from my line of sight. And make sure I don't see you 20 miles radius of this house, let alone my daughter. Or by the gods, you would be a dead meat," Mrs. Chike told him, turned around in anger, and stormed into the house, leaving a shocked and worried Brad. Sophia was crying inside her room as she sat on the bed, waiting for her mother, for she knew for sure that her mother would certainly come for her. "Sophia, is this what you have reduced yourself to? A valueless side chick to a playboy who had managed to dribble you so badly. You don't even know what's going on. What will you tell your God if the sex you had with him last night results to a pregnancy? As Sophia, tell me what you'll do with your life then? Will you consider something as abominable and sacrilegious as abortion? May the gods forbid, she asked and answered herself. At the mention of pregnancy and abortion, Sophia's heart skipped a beat, and the way she looked at her mother would have betrayed her outrightly if the woman had been looking at her. You see, Sophia, so you would end up as a baby mama to the one who once lied to you about how much he loves you, Mrs. Chike said. Mama, Brad loves me. He never lied about loving me. These things just happened, and I don't know how to explain it to you. But Mama, I mean the world to him, and I know, if I'm selfish enough to make him choose between me and his inheritance, he'll drop that girl like a sack of rotten potatoes and marry me tomorrow, Sophia said. Oh really? How wonderful. Now listen to me, Sophia. Men are very cunning when they want something. Brad even got me thinking so highly of him, so I won't really blame you. For if I, who isn't in love with him, could be tricked the much he did me, then I shouldn't blame you much for not seeing the handwriting on the wall. But where I'll blame you, and where I'll even disown you, is when I still see you around a man who left you to marry someone else for whatever reason, and is still callous enough to try to keep you trapped in his web of deceit, blocking you from better prospective suitors. Mrs. Chike blew hot. Mother, please, don't be too hard on him like this. He is hurting badly, even worse than I am, over this situation. Forcing me away from him will make things more disastrous for him. You won't believe it, but he told me, and I know it, that he will hurt himself if I leave him. Mum, Brad and I love each other, Sophia insisted, kneeling in front of her mother. Sophia, I'll let you continue whatever it is you think you're having with Brad. I'll even create a room where he can spend time with you here in this house, if you can answer this question honestly and correctly, Mrs. Chike told her daughter. Sophia dries her tears quickly and happily, and gets up to listen to the question. The last thing she wanted to do was ruin the chance her mother was willing to give. I'm listening, Mother. Please ask, and I promise to tell you the truth. Yes, Mother, I'll say the truth, and nothing but the truth, Sophia pledged, holding her mother's knees. Sophia, do you remember the drama that ensued in our compound some years ago, when you just turned 18? Mrs. Chike asked Sophia. Sophia couldn't tell where her mother was headed with the question, but she had promised to allow her be with Brad if she answered her questions. So she just had to go on. Yes, Mummy, when I turned 18, a particular young man had come to ask you and Dad to allow him marry me. He was persistent and almost made life a living hell for all of us with his continuous appearance at our house, even when you and Dad had already made it clear that you won't let me marry him, Sophia answered. Good. I'm very glad that you can remember that story very well, especially about how he persistently came to this house, insisting that we changed our stance about the marriage proposal, wearying everyone with his refusal to let the matter go, her mother said. Now that I have answered you, Mother, will you allow Brad and I be together? You never rejected him from the beginning, so he's certainly not like the one in the story we just remembered now, Sophia said. Of course, dear. I never rejected Brad from the beginning, and if he had loved you as he told you he did, he would have married you by now. But let's go on with my question. Sophia, do you remember that this particular young man had insisted that we allowed him marry you, even when we were concerned about your age and the fact that you're yet to acquire the education your father wanted for you before marriage? And when he had pleaded for so long, he switched to blackmail, threatening to harm himself if we didn't allow him to marry you? Mrs. Chike asked. Yes, Mother. I remember begging you and Dad to allow me marry him even when I didn't really want to, because I was afraid of what he could do to himself, Sophia replied her mother. Since then, Sophia, have you seen this man again? I mean, after your father got him arrested and made him sign an undertaking never to harass you again. Have you seen him again? Mrs. Chike asked. Yes, Mother. I even saw him the day I graduated from the university. He came to pick up his wife, who had also just graduated. But why the questions about him? Are you regretting the decision to chase him away back then? Sophia asked her mother. The issue of what we could have done about that proposal is a story for another day. But for now, I want to ask you. That dude that said he'd die if he didn't marry you, did he truly die or he moved on and even married our neighbor's daughter some months later? She asked Sophia. Well, yeah, he married soon after. But I'm yet to understand why we're talking about him. I was asking you to allow me be with Brad, because he told me. She was saying. Then she trailed off, realization dawning on her. Do you get it now, Sophia? Do you see what I'm driving at? Sophia, Brad doesn't love you. If he loves you, he wouldn't get married to another woman after being with you for so long, and then make you do bad things. First, he made you tell me lies about your whereabouts. Then he kept you in a hotel room, probably told his wife his own share of lies and deflowered you. When he isn't your husband, Mrs. Chike shrieked. Mama, things may have happened the way they did. Brad may have made me do so many bad things, but I can't leave him. I don't know how I'd be able to start all over, being single again and not knowing what tomorrow holds, Sophia said, resuming the cries. So Sophia, right now, are you not single? Tell me, are you married or engaged? My dear, please listen to me. I want nothing but the best for you. Please forget about Brad and move on. Hanging on to Brad will shield you from being seen by those who should see you. Stay away from him, my dear. You're very beautiful and likable. It'll only be a matter of time, and the right person will come your way. If you do not get over that which you couldn't get, how will you be able to get on with that which you should get? Her mother cajoled. Mummy, I know I should, I know I'm supposed to, but I can't. I can't stay away from Brad, Sophia said stubbornly. My instructions are clear, Sophia. You are not allowed to see Brad again, or I'll disown you. Mrs. Chike blew hit, tired of cajoling her. She looked at her daughter for a few painful moments and walked away. Sophia looked at her mother's disappearing figure, shook her head and made a hard decision. I have always loved you, Mum, always wanted to do your biddings, but right now, I've got my life to live. What's more, neighbors would soon begin to ask why he's no longer coming around if I still stay back here. Some will even intentionally ask why we haven't tied the knot, just to mock me. So I just have to make that move now, Sophia thought. Although she had agreed with her mom the previous night to stay away from Brad, she called him the next morning to meet her in a hotel after she had dropped a note telling her mother that she had gone to take her destiny in her hands. Baby, I'm so happy that you chose to be with me. I'm so glad that you understand just how much you mean to me, and that I can do anything for your sake, Brad told Sophia, kissing her lovingly as they sat on the hotel bed. As usual, he called his wife and gave another super story that gave him 3 days to be with Sophia, delighting Sophia who wanted to be with him. Sophia was in high spirits, getting kissed and touched virtually every minute they had a chance to. She was hoping she could get pregnant and force Brad to make her his second wife. For Brad, he loved the fact that he could do anything with Sophia. He could get as adventurous and acrobatic as he liked in bed with her. And he had somehow been able to make her accept to lie low whenever he spoke with his wife, so he didn't have to always go to the bathroom to make his calls. He could have her lying right on top of him and be calling his wife, telling her how he missed her and how he can't wait to be home. At first, Sophia was always sad about how he'd hush her while making those calls. But with time, she was getting used to his sermons of, I just had to tell her what I did, for the sake of my aunt. You know it's you I want, or I'd not be here with you. At the end of the second day of their stay in the hotel, the estate agent Brad contracted to get them a house, gave him a positive response. He had got them a fully furnished duplex in Sophia's choice location. And by the time Brad was ready to go home to his wife, he had totally settled Sophia into her new house, with a promise of never letting her feel his absence. My love, you know I'm not very good with guesses. Please tell me what it is, Brad urged Emily as he lay on the bed beside her, stroking her hair lovingly. Since they got married, he had been doing his best to keep his extramarital affair with Sophia away from her. Not truly because he thought she'd tell his aunt anything, but because he was afraid of hurting her. When he approached Emily to become his wife, the one he could present to his aunt and the society as his partner, He never planned to love her or let her share his affection for Sophia. But the more she loved him, the more she showed him just how ready she was to see things work between them, the more he was unconsciously getting drawn to her. On their wedding night, he had gone away with Sophia and spent the night pleasing the one he loved and not the one that he wedded. But he spent the next day, making her feel as wanted as a newly wedded wife should feel, even though he wasn't ready to take her to bed then. He only got to take her to bed almost a week after their wedding. And that day, although he knew he needed to consummate their marriage, his mind was far away from Emily, the thoughts of Sophia filling his heart as he kissed his wife. But something about the way she clung to him both in pain and pleasure while their first encounter lasted made him feel like protecting her from hurt, and there and then, he made up his mind to do his best to ensure the two women never had a reason to worry about the other. They have been married for about 6 weeks, and in all these times, he spent more time with Sophia, but made sure he didn't make Emily ever imagine there was anyone else. He provided her with all she needed, and while he stayed in bed with Sophia those countless number of nights, he made Emily believe he traveled for important missions. He'd call her and tell her how he loved and missed her. As a woman, Emily felt both loved and wanted. She kept thanking her stars for making her find a man as cool and caring as Brad, because even though the new business he got himself always made him travel, the times he spent with her were always filled with love. So that day as they lay in bed, she told him she had good news for him and had asked him to guess what it was, but he had begged her nonstop to spill the news. "I know, right, but you just have to guess or I won't tell you," Emily told him, smiling shyly. "Okay, how about I order you a box of your favorite chocolates now? Would that make you just tell me? I'll even give you an extra sweet kiss as a reward too." "Please, my love, just tell me," Brad cajoled Emily. "Well, I'm just going to tell you anyways. I already know I'll still get the extra kiss one way or the other," Emily said, rolling her eyes. "Okay, baby, are you saying it now, or I kiss it out of you?" Brad asked, cupping her face in his hands. "I'm pregnant, honey," Emily said with a shy and triumphant smile. Brad pulled away from her, looked at her stomach, at her face and at her face again. "Baby, tell me you're not joking with something as serious as this," Brad asked, barely containing the joy his soul was oozing. "Of course, honey. How can I joke with a thing like that when I know how much it'd mean to you? You know, when you went to Abuja last week, I was ill and had to go to the hospital. Dr. Segan had me run some medical tests, and he confirmed the pregnancy. I didn't want to tell you on the phone, so I waited for you to return," she told Brad, stretching a paper to him as she spoke. Brad took a look at the piece of paper, and he was soon hugging and kissing Emily with all the love in his heart. "Oh, baby, this calls for celebration. I'm going to be a father? I can't believe this. You're making me a father, and just a few weeks after our wedding. I'm going to show you what it means for a man to love his wife tonight," Brad promised his wife. "But you were meant to be with your business associates today. I thought you'd be leaving before evening today," Emily asked in surprise. "Forget it, my love. The business associates can wait. The business can wait for all I care. I'm going to be a father," Brad exclaimed happily. So, while Emily watched him in pure admiration and happiness, Brad called one of his business associates to tell the others that he'd not be able to come that night as planned. And just like he had promised, Brad made her feel every bit loved and cherished that night, pampering her while he loved her tenderly all night, and assuring her of his unending love and care. For the days that followed, Sophia didn't get to see Brad because he was too busy doting on his pregnant wife, to care about the whining of the woman he loved so much but couldn't marry. "Hello, pretty," a dashing young man greeted Sophia as she stood by her car. She was heading home after seeing a movie in a cinema in town when one of her tires failed her. She had called Brad, but he didn't take her call, but sent her a message some seconds later to tell her he was with his wife and can't take her calls. "Of course you can't take my calls. You don't even know why I'm calling, but I have to go to hell because you're with someone who only appeared yesterday. You let me believe I won't notice you dissed our engagement and married someone else. You promised to always make me your priority. But what do we have now? I remain abandoned for days, and you can't take my calls because you're with her, Sophia complained in frustration. She was lost in bitter and painful thoughts, speaking to no one in particular, as she was thinking of what to do when someone spoke to her. Sophia knew she heard a voice, but she didn't know someone was standing so close to her, and that the person was actually talking to her. "Are you okay, pretty?" the voice asked again, jolting her back to reality. "I'm okay, yeah, I'm fine," she stuttered as she noticed that someone had walked up to her while she was consumed in her grief and anger. "I don't think so, pretty. But if you say you're okay, then I just hope you are. My name is Jovani, and I can see you have a deflated tire. Mind if I helped you?" Jovani asked Sophia, smiling all the time. "Thanks, Jovani. I'll be glad if you can help me," Sophia said with all the charm she's got. A few minutes later, Jovani told Sophia they'd have to leave her car behind because she hadn't been riding with a spare tire. He offered to drive her home after he called his mechanic to get a spare tire to move the car out of there. Sophia didn't have much choices, so she got into the car quickly and was soon riding home with Jovani, who promised to take her to her house before he heads home. They were both shocked to know that they were actually next block neighbors when they arrived at Sophia's house. He parked the car in front of her house and turned around to open the door for her to step out. She thanked him sincerely and made to go. "You never got to tell me your name, Jovani remarked. "Oh, forgive my manners, Sophia is the name. Once again, thanks for helping me out. I don't know what I would have done without your help tonight," Sophia said honestly. "It's okay. Just take care of yourself and be sure to let go those things that hurt your beautiful heart. You deserve to be happy," he told her, holding her left hand. And so, for the days that followed, what started as a casual checking up on a neighbor to know if she was feeling better turned out to be an endless wooing. "I've told you before, Jovani, you're a good man. I would ordinarily like to be with you, but like I said, I have a man in my life. And yes, you already know that he is married, but he loves me so much that he doesn't want to let me go," Sophia was saying to Jovani on one of his numerous visits to her house. "Please, Sophia, don't let us have to keep talking about this over and again. You deserve much more than you're giving yourself. Please let me be the one for you. Let me, who is willing to make you my number one and only, love you right. Can't you see, Sophia? You're too much to be a second fiddle for any reason," Jovani told her, holding her hand as he spoke. Sophia turned around to talk to him, to respond to what he had just said, but she heard a voice she wasn't expecting that night. Whose voice do you think Sophia heard now? Will Sophia's life remain the same after this night? Find out what happens next in the next episode. If you're new here, please click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to get notified when I post the next episode. Don't forget to leave a comment to tell us what you think about girls like Sophia and men like Brad.